The question I just wanted to ask is, what do you think it is about Morocco that's been able to succeed and achieve this kind of progress that both of you have outlined that we haven't seen in other countries, especially in a country such as Egypt, which of course, as you mentioned, has a long tradition of the Muslim Brotherhood, other Islamic groups, Salafists. Can you explain to us why do you think that Morocco has been so successful?
Sure. I'll respond to the questions at once.
Sure. And thank you, Dr. Abadi, for joining us today and for your very thoughtful and thorough remarks, and for Peter for putting this together, and to the Deputy Foreign Minister for her very informative comments. As Peter alluded to, I'm a part of a Middle East Strategy Task Force that the Atlantic Council is organizing in conjunction with a number of other experts, including Geneva, and other institutions around town and in the region. And we're trying to look at the entirety of what's going on in the Middle East right now, and trying to drive towards some sort of bipartisan consensus on a possible strategic approach going forward. All that is to say that I'm in question mode, and so I have really just a set of questions that maybe build upon Geneve's. And the first is done such interesting work with imams, such interesting work, including in prisons, such interesting work on curriculum reform, and I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about that, and in particular what you're most excited about and what you think are sort of best practices that others can adopt, whether here in the Middle East, in Europe, wherever it might be. The second is, you talked about the need for passionate individuals, that if Morocco and other countries are going to counter the narrative of Daesh, that you need very independent-minded, very creative, very resourceful people who are really committed to the cause. And I guess that's often hard in the region where politics and religion are so tightly meshed. And I wondered if you could speak to that, just the ability of imams in particular to be independent voices at a moment like this where politics are so tightly held. And then it's clear that you see some very positive things happening in Morocco, but I'd like to ask you your assessment of what's happening in the rest of the region, if you can be candid about that. Where are you seeing promising things happening? Where are you concerned? As you look to partners, where are you finding the most interesting partners? We've seen a number of new organizations rise up. Just to mention one, I know that in the UAE there's a Council of Religious Elders that's recently been formed. You know, there's been some institutional change. What institutions are you finding most promising and interesting? Where do you see scholars coming together in a meaningful way to try to counter the messages of Daesh? And finally, just your assessment of sort of the trajectory of Daesh over the long term. Is this something we're going to be confronted with for a long, long time? Is this something that will grow bigger rather than smaller in the next decade? You know, what do you see as its likely shelf life, and how long will it remain a problem? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those insightful questions. And I would take it from what you said earlier, Ginny, when you talked about those nuances between official Islam and popular interpretation of Islam. This is a very crucial item, because official Islam, because it was brought and carried by functionaries who were there as functionaries, definitely they the belief dimension was there, but it was not salient enough, was not present enough. And those institutions of official Islam in the region suffered from 4 stigmatas. The first stigmata is the stigmata of satisfaction. We are there, we are the scholars of Islam, and our vestimentary dimension proves it. The way we pronounce words proves it. And our organization also endorses it. And we are there. So there is no need for those institutions in the previous time to tackle the comprehensions. And I would like here to highlight the fact that innovation and renovation was also present since the 1900, when Jamaluddin Afghani came and was tackling this very specific issue. When talking about the scholars of Al-Azhar, that there is a need of renewal of the discourse. And Muhammad Abdu and Muhammad Rashid Rida afterwards. But this did not shake those fixated states of mind enough to generate the change. It gave birth to some dynamics, but those dynamics were not enough. Whereas the holders of the dream of purity produced some very simple, to not say simplistic, discourse that was comprehensible and it was accessible by everybody. Islam in the 1900 period, after the rise of the Saudian state in alliance with the Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab descendants, the discourse became very simple all of a sudden. So no madhabs, no scholars, no quotations. We can have direct access to the text, and then we have the authority to interpret the text. There is no need to be an erudite in Arabic or in all the other sciences of Islam. Just go and there, and you will get it. And you would have some organizations of big scholars who would assist you if you do fail, and who would produce some very accessible booklets that would not be very hard to understand. This is the Islam that's crossed and infiltrated populations through pilgrimage and through the offered free copies of millions and millions and millions of copies that were there in the region and readable, adopted by the imams, who were not anymore willing to go to the expanded and extended versions of the books of knowledge of Islam, and this was there, and it was tackling some burning issues in the daily life. This was the understanding. So the first stigmata was this, officiality. The second stigmata is that when socialism came in the region and Pan-Arabism came in the region, this institution suffered, official religious institution suffered many sorts of humiliation. So it lost its credibility. It was not as present, as respected as it used to be before. The third is when the Safavids with the Ottomans in the late decades of the 19th century started to combat each other, unfortunately, the Shi'is were brandishing the fact that, well, you are on payrolls, whereas we are independent. We receive the khums from the population, and we do not depend on any other official institution. So we are free-minded, and you are not, simply. This also relinquished some of the credibility of this institution. The fourth stigmata was the fact that, well, the system of offering dignity to those scholars was not of the most efficient. The payrolls were very poor, And many of those scholars were constrained to look how to complete the expenses of the month elsewhere. It was not offered by the institutions. So this was not generating enough motivation in those institutions, which weakened those institutions. And now there is a very crucial need to avoid the waste. I was talking about thousands, hundreds of thousands of those officials. We need really some building of capacities and some empowerment in those institutions. Why Morocco? Well, we've had the chance, geostrategically speaking, to be the far west before those wonderful lands were discovered by the European and the Asian mind, because they existed and people were here. And they were discovered by those minds and cultures, as everybody knows, 1492. This Far West's position gave us the luxury to witness the tidal waves erupting from the epicenter of the world, and then not arriving to our shores until they were milded somehow. The time, and as the French would call it, the recul, to deconstruct those concepts that were erupting from the epicenter of the world. And we did it, as Frank Sinatra would like to say, we did it our way somehow. We made the difference also between Islam and Muslims in Morocco. We made the difference very early because we said, well, we are welcome in Islam, but we are refusing the Umayyads and refusing the Abbasids and all those dynasties that came afterwards. We had our own dynasties, and there was even some extremism in this regard. I would not like to go into details, but we made a difference. And this is why the Ottomans never came in Morocco. So we had our own proper schools of thoughts in Morocco, religiously wise. And also, we succeeded in solving a very crucial problem in the Muslim Weltanschauung, which is the fact that Shi'is and Sunnis are having this difference. The descendants of the Prophet need to be in power, needs to be in power. This is a Shi'i condition for the legitimacy of the power. And the Sunnis would not care much about this. But in Morocco, we made the junction. And we have the descendants of the prophets in power from centuries ago. And this is how it started, as a matter of fact, with Moulay Idris I. And since then, this was the case. So we did not live this incomfort that was lived in Damascus or lived in Baghdad or in the other capitals of the region, even in Samarkand, the other capitals of the region. This definitely contributed, along with the choices, the three choices I mentioned in ritual, dogma, and in Sufism, contributed in solving some of the problems that are lived in the region. I do evaluate very much the Atlantic Council initiative, which is to approach the problem in a multi-dimensional manner, to realize that there are links of the chain and pieces of the puzzle, and each piece has its own engineering and its own architecture that needs to be tackled on its own. And then there is this concern of harmony and coherence between all those pieces. And the terms, I'm talking here comprehension-wise. This goes along with cogitation and along with research and collection of data and analysis of data, and then extraction and deduction of what could be solutions. And this is what think tanks do at the end of the day. But this proficiency that you alluded to is very efficient and definitely would make some difference in tackling the extremist issue. I also, in terms of the past practices, well, I'd like to highlight the fact that we do believe in the celebration of efforts in Morocco. Nothing comes easy, so we need to construct it from scratch and then have the passion to irrigate it and to look after it and to clean it and to follow it up. We cannot just initiate and then leave it. We need to follow up. And for this, at certain points we've been suffering because we would lack human resources, we would not find the scholars that would do, and we would need to build them up, scholars that would understand both the text in its originality and in its details, of course, and also the context in which this text is to be implemented, and make the junction and jointment between those two dimensions. As the text has its own sciences to be understood, the context has its own sciences to be understood. And it's very hard to find them in one person. And this gave us many problems, because you would have many adjustments to do to make the text fit in the context without losing its originality, because then it would be attacked by those who do claim the exhaustion of the dream of purity. And this is what they are very good at. So we need to avoid it by making sure that, but this takes some celebration of the effort and respect for the people who would do it. Also, to not speak this wooden tongue, as they say, those people, when we do train them, they are having offers from other countries, from other places, and very handsome offers. So to conserve them is not something very easy. So this is another problem that we are trying to tackle as well. And they would come from the windows of unity. Because, Islam is Islam. Anywhere it is served, it is served. So I do not need to stay in Internet. And then we are in the era of Internet. I can work from distance and keep up with what you're doing. And whereas now it needs some daily tacklement and daily work. And this is why I do come to your second question, which is passionate individuals. Because there is passion in the other shore of the chess square, to make it ludic a little bit. Passion is very vibrant there. And this is why it is very contagious. You cannot face such a passion with a fade attitude that used to be there in brandishing wisdom as imposing an attitude of calm and of serenity, which serenity is very useful at some point, but efficiency needs to be with serenity. Otherwise, serenity by its own could be efficiency-free, which is not a desired result. One of the wise people of our institution once said, "You want to talk to tigers, do not send rabbits, send tigers." So we need some tiger-trained, good scholars type to go and talk with those tigers. Because we do perceive, and this is a paradigm shift that needs to be performed, we do see this as a disease in comprehension and in understanding. Because they simply are not getting it. They do have this very big desire for unity, purity, dignity. It's there, and it's a fact. And everybody has the same desire. But this is not the way. And we need to be very good in demonstrating that this is not the way, and giving alternative. This is the way. And then it needs to be working on the field, to be touchable, tangible. And this is what Morocco is trying to do. We're trying to say it's possible. Look, we are not, as I said, there yet, but we are coming and getting to it. So this is why in Morocco we do recruit amongst Salafists to come. And once you face them and tell them, well, you pretend that you master the text. Well, let's verify this. And humbly and lovingly, we need to demonstrate that, well, they do not master the text. And these are the shortcomings. This is what they need to complete, and we are here to complete this. To do that, to be able to do that, you need to build up some authority. Otherwise, nobody will listen to you. Who are you to pretend that you would verify my knowledge of the text? And this is why some previous work was done, which is to produce, to publish, to create initiatives, to present studies and propose solutions for the burning issues, talk about human rights and Islam, talk about women issues and Islam, talk about extremism in Islam, talk about global warming in Islam, but in a very sound manner that would be recognized, adopted by the masses. Once you create this authority and you have a crew of scholars that are charismatic and that do have men and women the aura to convince and to say, let's verify, and then to be listened to, then you can start the work. So you need to snatch recognition from them, not to come and impose on. Because the time of the state that would impose a scholar as being a scholar, even though if he is not or she is not a scholar, is over. So now it's some touchable and tangible authorities that need to be built. Then, after this, we would direct the context. The context is intricate, amalgamated, and complexified. What are your tools to decipher the context, to understand it, and to know its various dimensions? Do you have the keys for that? What are the keys? I'm talking anthropology, I'm talking economics, I'm talking history, I'm talking, name it. All those keys that would allow you understand the context. Then some respect would be triggered. And then we can talk. Then we can talk. But it's a true tango that needs to be danced before convincing those tigers to join the crew. Also, the question before last, yes, there is hope in the region because the awareness is there. The awareness is there, and we as humans, Homo sapiens, we do have in our genes competitiveness. We love to compete. We love to measure ourselves to others. So you Moroccans are doing so, we can do the same. Well, and we love it, and we cherish it. We appreciate it. This is what we are targeting as well. Let's trigger some competition over there. And then people would measure themselves, would look at your practices. If they're good, they would be adopted. And this is what we are aspiring for. We do not want in Morocco ourselves to be the redemptors. We just want to be a part of a whole dynamic in the world which happens to have crossed from the extremely large to just large to tiny to very tiny. I'm quoting Thomas Friedman here. So there are some good practices. Unfortunately, sometimes they are amalgamated with some politics. And there is this insulting of the other's intelligences. Some countries would aspire to instrumentalize other countries to prevail and to be the ones who are doing it. And this is for the fame of our country. We're putting our dollars in there, so we need some recognition. Why you? Why them? Why not me? Why, you know. And this ruins it at some point. And this is why we need some psychological campaigning to make it happen. Because it is not very easy to make the moutarde of Dijon. It takes some expertise there. So good things are happening in the region, but there is still some work to do. And it takes some very sound realism. But this sound realism should not take away from you hope and confidence. And this is another equation to solve, of course. Trajectory of Daesh, the last question. Yes, Daesh is the mutated version of Al-Qaeda, which is the mutated version of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the mutated version of the Wahhabism and the movements of Turkey al-Fatat and Misr al-Fatat that used to be in the region. In the Shi'i dimension, you've had the Nawab Safawi movement, which is Fida'iyan Islam. And you've had the Sadr movement and the Shirazis movement and the other movements that were quite alike, with the slight difference that, well, those movements claim to detain the secrets of the knowledges of the descendants of the Prophet. But in the region, it was there. So Daesh is the mutation of all those aspirations. And it has many ancestors in the region. Daesh now has its efficiency because of three main factors. The first one is this venom of fear that spread in the psyches of the world, whereas they are not over in the region. There are 30,000, but throughout the world and in the fibers of internet, you could count maximum some 2 million. We are talking in a world of 7 billion Homo sapiens. Are we not able to face this? But the venom of fear just impedes you, stops you from taking initiatives. Because you lose over 50% of your capacities. But once this fear becomes a rotten fear, then it becomes more dangerous to cure. And they are bargaining on this. They are really relying on that. How to extract away the venom of fear from the psyches. Satire could do, but we're not very accurate in using satire. Movies in Hollywood could do, but we're not putting dollars in this direction. Video games could do, but we're not doing enough job in this. We're just restricting ourselves to this very serious format of, discourse, and which is not the true arena of this. So the first factor is the factor of fear. The second factor is the mastery of the new technologies. It's like me talking, using a mic, and having an argument with my friend back there without a mic. I would be hurt, whereas she would not be hurt. So we need to provide her with a mic, because she might have something more interesting than what I'm saying right now. So empowerment is the solution to this, building up capacities. And for this, we need to engage new dynamics that would convince people who are professionals in this domain to join this. And I think that the White House summit that happened last month, as a matter of fact, triggered some of those initiatives. The third factor is the counter-narrative. Counter-narrative is very important because it tackles the content dimension. And we need, as I said in the beginning, to develop some enzymes to be able to do so. So these are the characteristics of the joint project that we all aspire to, and I would like to congratulate the Atlantic Council to have triggered these initiatives of studying the issue from those various and complementary perspectives. Thank you.
Before opening up the discussion, let me just pose one additional question for you, Dr. Abadi. The efforts that you have outlined are primarily prophylactic in the sense of trying to prevent the spread of violent extremist ideologies, or perhaps to counter the argument. But there are unfortunately some, however small a number, who've already gone over to the other side. And you've given us hope that at some point in the future, Daesh will be defeated, and then we have these people who went over, and we can't jail them all. What do we do with them? And I think one aspect of what Morocco's been doing that perhaps we haven't talked about, and I'd invite you to say a few words about before we go, is what to do with reintegrating those who have gone over and converting them back, if you will. You know, just a year ago, His Majesty the King went to Tangier and did the Friday Jummah prayers at the mosque of Mohammed Fizazi, who many people don't know, but of course used to preach at the Al-Quds mosque in Hamburg that the 9/11 attackers went to. But he's an example that perhaps is not well known, but there are many others, of course. Could you talk a little bit about the process of bringing back these people?
Thank you, Peter, for raising this. I would like to come back to one question, which was, is it to grow for Daesh? The seeds are here, and those 3 dimensions I mentioned need to be initiated to allow the stopping of the spreading of those seeds, because the growing process is there. And especially, as Minister Mbaka said, if we do not integrate the other dimensions, socio-economic, securitarian, academic dimensions, and other dimensions to stop the process. But the seeds are there, and they will definitely continue to spread unless there is a more efficient, more appealing reality that would rise and give some other venues to this. Reintegration, Peter, is capital, of course. And this is what I was alluding to when I said tigers need to be recruited to talk to tigers. And this is what I was alluding to when I said we proceeded to a paradigm shift to consider this phenomena as a disease that we can cure. As because it's a disease in comprehension, in understanding, in approaching. And we need to present, like when you're trying to prove that some water is polluted, you need to produce some pure water in exchange to be picked up instead of the other water. And this water should be delicious, should be, all the characteristics that would allow the picking up of this initiative. We were inspired in Morocco by what was happening in the addiction fight field. The most efficient agents to combat addictions were the former addicts. And those people, once recruited and once adopting the conviction to do the combating of addiction, would be the most efficient. And this is the same for the former fighters or foreign fighters. I do very energetically recommend that we develop professionals that would work with those people rather than just put them in jail. We definitely need to extract the networks and the names and to prevent the dangers, but also we need this parallel work to be done as well. And they would be efficient. And this is what we have witnessed in Morocco with many of those former fighters in Morocco. Fizaz is just one example. We have some other examples undercover who are operating very efficiently in this field as well. But this definitely takes the development of curriculums that would allow, because once you follow up the experience of former addicts, you would see that the curriculums and the trainings provided to those people are not the simplest, but they are very fruitful. It pays. It is worthy to invest in this direction.
Thank you. Now let's open it up to questions from the audience, not only for Dr. Abadi, but also Ms. Abdo and Dr. Gran. If you would please wait for the microphone to come to you and be so kind as to identify yourself as well.
Hello, thank you so much for your comments and the information you've given us today. I'm from American University. My students are here. I have a question because you mentioned religious education, re-education, counter-narratives. But what has Morocco done in terms of economic empowerment and development? You mentioned that some young people obviously might be drawn to some of the messages of the violent groups, such as you don't have a job, come join us, we will make you work for us. So can you talk a little bit specifically what has Morocco done in terms of economic empowerment for both women and men in Morocco? And then also how does also rule of law changed, or what project has been done in Morocco in the past years? And finally, my third question, I'm sorry, it's about funding. So we know that a lot of funding that goes to violent groups such as ISIS comes through a lot of countries through internet or organizations in different countries. Can you tell us what Morocco has done to make sure that the funds are not channeling through Morocco? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like, on behalf of my friend Peter and on behalf of the Atlantic Council to welcome our students who are here today. It's made me you made my day actually. Everybody is important, but students are definitely, we all agree upon that, the hope and the future. In Morocco, after the unfortunate events of 2003, His Majesty the King initiated a new initiative, which is the National Initiative of Sustainable Development. And this initiative started in the most deprived areas of the nation. This is what it started. In Sidi Moumen, in Lower Squila, in Lower Al-Hufra, in Lower Doum, and other areas, in various cities, and very important funds were mobilized for this issue. If you ask me my opinion, how was it governed? I would frankly say not in the most perfect manner, no way, but it started. And now we are aware that it didn't go as it should be going. And this is why a new great responsible, a lady, Germay, Nadira, was appointed by His Majesty to follow up this, along with an observatory with Rashid bin Mukhtar that was initiated for this purpose, to make the follow-up in details and to not make this money be spent on some chimeras, virtual projects. It is taking also some energy and some work, but the process is there and the awareness is there. Two, we have witnessed that there is an amalgamation as a matter of facts. Architecture is one of the factors. When we do build cities or quarters without playgrounds, without gardens, without green spots, definitely this generates frustration. Humans need to be in proximity with beauty. And as a matter of fact, this is the bottom line of any religiosity. Beauty and happiness. If some religion or form of religiosity is generating frustration, anger. This means simply that it was not understood in the right, proper way. So this dimension, which is a quite subtle dimension, the dimension of beauty, and what we call in Morocco the places of life, lieu de vie, to allow a decent style of life and decent education and decent prosperity that would be realistic but yet optimized and produce some service in this dimension. The young people need to play, they need to have fun, they need to learn, they need to interact, and we need to assist them with this, but making it theirs, not dictating what needs to be done. Also, funding for those projects witnessed a new form of creativity, because many funds were launched for this reason. And the most famous of those funds is the Mohammed V Foundation, under the presence of His Majesty. But there is a wonderful lady, once again, and this is not a coincidence, because creativity with our ladies, of course, Zulikha Nasri, who is doing a wonderful job in this regard. We're not there yet, I do confess, but the work started and we're trying to do our best. Funding for Daesh, of course, economic intelligence is one of the forms of efficiency in any securitarian approach. If we lack this form of intelligence, it's very dangerous. And this is why in Morocco we've had some laws, and this is the junction with your question about law and the change of law. You are aware that 3 years ago a commission was launched to reform justice and the system of justice. And this is a great heavy work, of course. But we've had some texts about combating terrorism and about having the right to follow up the data in bank accounts and so on to discover those activities. And I can say that we have dismantled some initiatives in funding Al-Qaeda before and Daesh now in Morocco.
Over here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abadi. My name is Bob Holly, and I'm with Moroccan American Center. I think that you've made clear today in your presentation that what we really have here is a battle of ideas at the end of the day. I fear that there's a certain skepticism, both in the United States and in Europe, about the prospects of winning this battle of ideas, in part because I think it's not very visible to people here in the U.S. or in Europe what it is that people in the Muslim world are doing themselves to take on this battle of idea. If you share that point of view, what do you think can be done to provide some encouragement to people in the U.S. and in Europe that indeed you are tackling this battle of ideas at home?
I'll simply say an open invitation to anyone who would desire to come by and see and maybe give some piece of advice to ameliorate the process. But talking ideas, it is definitely based on training, on time investment and money investment, and also engineering of the approaches, because you cannot conduct a reflection on a problem that would take from you as an individual 250 years and conduct it in a chaotic way. The governance dimension, as all the think tanks do know, is a very crucial dimension, because this is why in think tanks we're talking about person years, and a work that would be maybe delivered in 1 year would have taken 300 person years, because then it was outsourced and it was done by many competencies that collaborated in giving birth to the products. So the governance dimension is very important. Governance definitely indicates the crucial necessity to know how to ask your questions. And we need some verification system and processes to verify if the questions are really rightly posed. Because sometimes you can pose a wrong question and work on providing an answer to it, and it will take from you years and thousands, maybe millions of dollars without any results. So this link, which is how to ask and pose the questions, is very crucial, talking about ideas. What made Daesh be appealing is that they just came to those dreams, the three dreams, dignity, unity, and purity, and hijacked them and formed a geographical, factual, tangible piece of land, using all the chaos in the region to market the fact that, well, they're doing it. They're providing unity and purity, and this is Islam without hypocrisy. Those are ideas at the end of the day. So we need to provide counter balances via ideas as well. And this definitely passes through asking the right questions and having the decent, efficient capacities to answer those questions. Then, implementation-wise, this definitely takes some channels. Because to communicate an idea, you cannot, in think tanks, we're talking about cold meat. You cannot just produce an idea and just leave it on the shelves. You need to market it. And to market ideas, you need to have some very majestuous disposals to do so. And it takes also some ideas. This cannot transcend the capacity of the world, the free world. The Muslim world could be a partner in this. But we need to be aware of the fact that those are, at the end of the day, ideas that are being vehiculated throughout the fibers of the net and invading the psyches of young, desperate youngsters. And, of course, candidates to be recruited by those ideas.
Right here.
Thank you. My name is Daniela, and I am a student at New York University. My question, I don't know if I'm asking the same question as the person before me, but in a non-Muslim country such as U.S. or other European nations, how do you combat the rising number of fighters going to Syria and Iraq, joining Daesh? Because I know that you mentioned before that Morocco has a lot of social programs that help to, educate young scholars, imams. But how do we translate that to countries who don't necessarily have, a Muslim background and Muslim system in their country?
Yeah. Thank you for this very timely question, because this requires another counter-narrative. It is not because the context is different, but this definitely passes through demystifying the discourse that is being adopted by Daesh to recruit among those people. They use guilt doses for this. They will talk about colonialism. They will talk about the invasion of the West to the rest of the world, and that you as free citizens of the West, you need to do your mea culpa and join and serve in the ranges of freedom soldiers to free the world. We need to demystify such discourse and produce counter narratives that would definitely face those items that are used to recruit youngsters from the West as well.
And the challenge now also, of course, is the power of social media. And if you look at even recently, these two young, well, teenagers who went through Turkey to join ISIS in Syria, they were influenced by social media. And it's a big, big problem. I mean, as you point out, I mean, social media has no parameters. There's no real way to control it. There's a big discussion, even in the private sector, of trying to shut down Twitter accounts. And as was mentioned, a lot, it's not just ISIS, it's Salafists, it's all sorts of other non-state actors who have really active social media accounts. They have millions of followers. I mean, some Salafists in Saudi Arabia have 12 million followers. So it's almost uncontrollable, unfortunately. But it's through this kind of messaging. And as was pointed out, I mean, how do you counter that? It's a big challenge. Because their microphone, to use your metaphor, is much more powerful than anybody else's microphone. But a big problem is with social media.
Of course. Of course.
Question right here.
Thank you, Dr. Abadi, for your presentation. I would like to ask you if there are any institutional multilateral cooperation in the region to produce what we have so rightfully called this conceptual and intellectual enzymes to fight the ideology of Daesh. I do also agree with you when you said that it's no longer enough for a tiger to roar if it can't be heard through social media. So what is being done to close this gap, this apparent gap in know-how in the use of social media precisely? Thank you.
Of course, I'll start by your second part of the question. It's computer engineering, simply. We need our units of computer engineering in our universities throughout the world to be aware of those challenges and definitely re-look their programs to fit in the new challenges and the new context. So it's a professional work. Yes, passion is omnipresent in all those initiatives, but it's professional, and it needs to be funded, it needs to be re-engineered to respond to those challenges. Of course, the element of appeal is crucial here. You can have the most professional people in the world in social media, but if their discourse is not appealing, it will not do. They will be beaten, because you can have some very simple tools and monitorings, but yet appealing. This would definitely beat the most professional if they are not appealing. As for your first part of the question, I cannot pretend that now in the region there is some serious work about deconstructing the discourse and providing counter-narratives as efficiently as we would hope it to be. But we are at least trying to do our share of the work. At least let's say it's possible. Or the American very efficient slogan, yes we can.
Back there, right there.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abadi. I work with Search for Common Ground, and we are actually partnering with you in Morocco, and very much share the perspective that you're bringing today. You know, when we use this word counter-narrative, we're often mistaking it for a narrative that is trying to demonize the other side. And that's what's so refreshing with what you're saying, is that it's about actually recognizing that the people attracted to Daesh are trying to respond to real needs for dignity and for unity, etc. And my question thus is, how can we continue this effective work in a context where other actors operating in the same environment are choosing to use violent or kinetic force and actually further sort of demonizing and inadvertently contributing to the narrative that attracts more people to these groups. So how do we continue and ensure that there's effectiveness in what we're doing to address these causes juxtaposed with other actors that are using violent force?
Thank you. Success has a tremendously delicious taste. Once we do taste it, we get addicted to it. So in such mega initiatives, we definitely need to generate some samples to be tasted. And this by fractioning the stages of the job, the work, and make it possible to taste some of the outcomes of what we're doing. Because it allows you to gain confidence about what you're doing. Whereas if you just let it develop and grow without presenting samples to be tasted, degustated, then it will be very hard to continue and to persevere. And this is why the approach should be based on this, to make it possible to valorize and to evaluate and to measure through indices and indicators how successful we were in tackling the issue. And this is what provides sustainability in tackling the job.
Thank you very much. Please now join me in thanking not just Dr. Abadi, but Dr. Grand, Ms. Abdo, as well as Minister Boyda for their time with us today.